Food and Beverage Magazine Live, bringing food and beverage to life. With your hosts, James Beard Award winner Jennifer English and Food and Beverage Magazine publisher Michael Politz. Featuring leaders in the hospitality, branded food and beverage, and CPG industries, many of whom are Jennifer and Michael's friends in the business. For an informal and informative conversation where friends in the business share the latest intel, ideas, and best practices. Live, juicy inside scoop from the tastemakers, newsmakers, bread bakers, drink shakers, spoon lickers, clam diggers, farms, foodies, and friends of the food and beverage magazine world. Here are your hosts, Jennifer English and Michael Politz.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Jennifer English. I'm editor-at-large of Food and Beverage Magazine, and this is Food and Beverage Magazine Live. Today, we're going to take you to the future of almost every industry you can imagine. It's being brought to life through a company and a genius technology and idea. It's really simple about connecting people and ideas. It's called Zenreach. John Kelly is their CEO, and he joins us today for a conversation to take us into his world. It's a pleasure to have him here in ours. Welcome, John Kelly. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Jennifer.
Tell us about this amazing technology. Frankly, since we started reading about it and digging into this, it's been fascinating. Of course, it stands to reason that you come from the world that built up to this point. We'll get to that. But let's just start by talking about what is Zenreach.
Sure. Zenreach is a technology company that has a software layer that sits on top of Wi-Fi. This is Wi-Fi that's in a restaurant or bar. And we use this technology to create what is called a guest Wi-Fi experience. So this enables consumers to log into the internet unlimited in exchange for their email address. And what we do on the back end is we tie their email address to the device that connected. And now we've got some really great intel and information that we help our merchants with, which is creating profiles of the consumers that come into the particular restaurant, being able to email and market to them, advertise to these consumers, and then also to be able to track the success of those efforts by the walkthroughs or when these consumers come back into the restaurant or bar.
Can you give me an example of a person like me walking into my favorite restaurant in the greater Bay Area? Let's say I go to one of Chef Desjardins' famous restaurants in San Francisco, and I am having a great experience. Tell me how I'm going to be, richly engaged by what Zenreach is doing.
Yeah, so think of this as like if you're in that restaurant and you're relaxing with friends and you want to share some photos that from your Facebook feed or something like that, and you don't want to burn the data, so you connect to Wi-Fi, right? And so what we're talking about here is enabling that experience. It's basically the branded Wi-Fi that's in the restaurant. You connect through that, and now all of a sudden you're unlimited Wi-Fi. You're not burning up your data plan, et cetera. This is the consumer experience is, wow, I can get unlimited Wi-Fi and I don't have to worry about the passwords and asking the manager, et cetera. What we then say to the merchant is, look, now you've got a profile of who your consumer is. And now you have an understanding of how many times they come back and how often they come back. And we supplement the information with publicly available data. So now we'll be able to say things like, hey, 52% of your consumers are female. And this is the age bracket. And this is the demographic information. And so we're giving these restaurants really great intel on their consumers that they would never have otherwise. And that enables us and them to collectively do really good marketing towards these consumers. I'm sorry, I think you're on. I can't hear you.
I said, are you going to be able to see that 100% of my customers love to eat my delicious hand-cut French fries?
If we have a point of sale integration where we get that line item information, yes.
That's awesome. Let's talk about how you got here to this point in your career. You've got a really robust history in terms of the seller experience in companies that we know the brand names of. I wanted to give you a chance to talk a little bit about your history and how your personal professional history really dovetails and along with this industry and how we can come to this moment where we're at today.
Yeah, I'm a little bit of an old timer in the internet industry. I started off a long time ago at AOL when they were kings of the universe. Spent many years at Yahoo in the early days, which was super innovative back at that time. I've done a few startups along the way, and also most recently was at eBay in charge of the seller experience growth team there. So a long history associated with internet advertising, e-commerce, and marketing. And the good news is, like, I've seen the evolution, right? And one of the missing components of this absolute blossoming of internet advertising and e-commerce has been connecting the dots between the online world and the offline world. That has remained elusive in the industry for the whole 20 years. And that's where we come into play at Zenreach. We're trying to connect those dots so that we know the consumer's online identity, their offline identity, and we can match the two to give a holistic view of what these consumers are doing and how we can optimize for their benefit.
For people who don't live in tech, what you just said is so fascinating. I wanted to give you the chance to talk about, is that really a very different space? Are we who we are in both places? And in that space where you and I are communicating with one another, is that the future of food and dining and hospitality?
Yeah, so I actually think maybe to frame it up in the way that a lot of retailers and even large restaurant chains, they look at the consumer in two different ways. And they'll say, here are my online consumers, and then they'll have like an online purchasing team, an online marketing team. And then here are my offline consumers, and there's a different database for that in many cases. And they'll have different store managers and offline marketing teams. And the truth of the matter is, none of us is an online only consumer or an offline consumer. We're a consumer, right? And we need to have that 360-degree view of the consumer in order for us to service those consumers appropriately. And I think that's the big challenge that we've had, that over the next few years, Zenreach and hopefully a few other companies will be working to solve.
Right. Well, one of the things I thought was really fascinating about your company and what you're doing, as the consumer, I don't think of myself as two people, the online
That's
me
right.
and the offline me. I just think of myself as me. And this incredible bridging that's happening on your end is that the same restaurant or the same supermarket really does see me in two different ways. And you really are helping them bring me integrated and aligned together in an experience that's going to not really ruffle my experience or make it any more difficult. In fact, it's going to make it richer and easier, I'm going to assume.
Yeah,
that's what I have gleaned from my experience with this.
that's absolutely right. If you know, I as a consumer, I walk out and you know, I go to my favorite pizza restaurant down the street, and I have a fantastic experience. And then they're sending me new customer mailers, coupons to say, "Hey, first-time customer, here you go." Well, you know, you don't need to do that. I'm already a loyal customer of you. That's a wasted marketing spend. That's one example. Oh, and by the way, it kind of makes me feel like you don't know who I am, even though I go there once a week. Like, that's a disjointed experience. We're working to solve that for restaurateurs.
Well, that is such a great segue, John. You and I should do a show together, because that was the perfect tee it up for me. The next thing I wanted to talk about was, in the hospitality industry, we love the idea of regulars. Regulars are not only frequent customers and guests, but they're also people who get to know us and we get to know. And when we get to know you better, we get to do more for you in the front of the house. A great manager, a great owner, a great operator is going to recognize you by name, learn the names of your kids every time you come. If it's a place that's down the street and around the corner and you go there regularly, a great host is going to give you a really warm welcoming. This sounds to me like Zenreach is empowering people to give you warm welcoming in every point of contact. And that's one of those things that regulars really grow to appreciate when they are in a trading relationship with somebody that becomes a real part of their life, in their neighborhood and in their world.
Yeah, I think you're hitting the right point. The really good personal experience is what makes dining out such a pleasure for most of us. And the disjointed experience is when we don't do that. And it happens all the time online. For example, I'm a big fan of the restaurant, the pizzeria down the street. I go in, the waiter knows me, puts me in my favorite table, knows the kids, actually knows their orders, and that's fantastic. Yet when they reach out to me online, there's no personalization whatsoever, right? I look like everybody else. It's not a customized experience. And what we can do is we can help enable much more personalization. We can enable those connections to be not just in person, but online as well. And then the flip side it is, what happens if somebody leaves a bad review, right, online, and they come back into the restaurant? Wouldn't it be really good to know when this person comes into the restaurant, hey, we have to make sure our service is especially good today? And these are the connections that we can enable that I think really makes the entire experience for the consumer much better.
We know that we're in a period of COVID. COVID and the pandemic have decimated the hospitality industry. We know this. Yes. We're not going out to eat because, well, the government says, stay home until it's safe to go out.
Right.
So this becomes a great challenge as more and more people are buying. One of the only categories of business that was growing over 2020 was online food sales. In both the grocery store and on-premise restaurant, now off-premise and the rest. Let's talk about how in that time, the online piece, which used to just be the complimentary piece to the handshake, welcome back, Mr. Jones, Mr. Kelly, welcome back, Miss English, that real regular treatment you would get from your favorite places, how that really went away, and almost exclusively we had to rely on our online relationship with our restaurants and our vendors and the sources of our online food buying. I don't think that we're going back now that we are really accustomed to getting our groceries delivered and other things delivered, that we're going back. Can you talk about how COVID impacted your business and really, I'm going to guess, elevated and catapulted what you guys were already doing to the point where the market just boomed on the online side?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that the pandemic has done to the industry, but the big thing is it has accelerated some of the adoption curves. Food delivery was growing before the pandemic. It completely blossomed. It exploded during the pandemic, as we know. Online ordering was growing before the pandemic. That has also exploded during this time frame. And I do think that even when people are more comfortable coming back to an in restaurant dining experience, that we're not going to see the same levels. It might drop a little bit as a percentage, but we're still going to see online ordering be much higher. We're still going to see food delivery be much higher. One of the big changes, and this is kind of my plea to all the restaurateurs out there, is online marketing has catapulted. Yeah. Right. It used to be that if you had a sale, special or an event that you wanted to put out there, you'd send out mailers, maybe put a sandwich board out front, maybe a billboard if you're really invested, maybe some radio ads. And the truth of the matter is, people aren't driving, so they're not seeing or hearing any of those. They're at home. Online engagement has exploded during this time frame. We're all on our devices, and so that's where you need to be if you want to put your message in front of the consumer. And the irony is, in the height of the pandemic, about 9-12 months ago, you saw an explosion of internet usage and a drop in internet advertising rates. So it really was the perfect storm for getting the message out there through online ads.
Let's talk about where you're available and how people can know how to engage your company and make this part of their customers' experience, because that idea of enriching data when you're the front of the house in a legendary restaurateur is remembering every customer's kids' names and birthdays. That's the idea of data in the analog world. But in your world, it's more important than ever to have all this data about who my customers are and how I can best serve them. Talk a little bit about that for us.
Yeah. So if you think about online experiences, there's a lot that you can do. There's a lot of data that you can gather about who your consumers are, and which enables you to do much better personalization. So I'll give you one example. This is an industry I used to work in like more than 10 years ago. If you were looking at shoes at a retailer and you happened to browse through a bunch of boots, but you didn't buy, you could leave, and it was called retargeting. You'd get ads that were served to you with the very specific boots you were looking at. And it like is eye-catching to a lot of people. That personalization was extraordinarily effective. It still is today. In fact, it's become a best practice in online marketing. Now, take that same analogy and apply it to the offline world. Hey, you're somebody that comes to the restaurant. We stopped, maybe you're a regular and you stopped coming. Wouldn't it be great to be able to put that online messaging in front of this consumer saying, hey, we miss you, come back, and here's your favorite pizza, or here's your favorite dish, right? It's the personalization layer that we can start to enable now is what's going to transform the way marketing's done for a lot of these restaurateurs.
That's amazing. If there was a way that we could help restaurants discover Zenreach, how can we help them find you? Because it sounds like something that's essential, especially for the groups or smaller and regional restaurants that might really be struggling to re-enter and re-emerge from this COVID period. This sounds like the thing that could really help a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, getting the understanding of your consumers, your offline consumers, is only going to help, right? Being able to reach out and market to them effectively is only going to help as well. Please, we would love to hear from anyone out there who needs help. Zenreach.com is the website. If you click on Contact Us, we're happy to give you a call and talk to you and see what we can do to help.
And how many restaurants are you in service and partnership with around the country and around the world? Is this a global enterprise at this point?
It is. We're primarily in North America, but we've got just under 10,000 locations across North America.
Wow, that's powerful. Well, congratulations. It's no surprise. It sounds amazing. And as a restaurant nerd, this is the kind of thing that really gave me some good food for thought. So thank you very much for being with us today. Is there anything that I've omitted in this conversation that you thought was essential we should make the point to communicate to our friends today?
I would say, look, we know that the past year has been difficult, and we've experienced it as well. We experienced the same kind of ups and downs that all of you have. We're here to help. We're getting through this. We're already seeing in-store traffic come back up in the last 4 weeks. It's been pretty steady. We're starting to see people come back into restaurants. So the vaccine is rolling out. We're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Take advantage of this return of in dining and foot traffic. Take advantage of it right now to get that understanding of your consumers that will enable you to really flourish in the latter half of the year.
Well, one of the things, John, that really strikes me is you've got a tremendous amount of information and data about who we are as a food-loving nation. I would love it if we could continue this conversation with some of these trends, because I would imagine you see trends better than almost anybody else, and you see them almost immediately since they're happening in relatively live time for you. Given that, what are one or two of the things that you could share with me that we might be really surprised to hear about what's actually happening on premise?
Yeah, so one of the things that was kind of surprising to us in the early days of the pandemic was that even though business were closed and even though there was a tremendous amount of fear on the consumer's part, we were still seeing 25, 30% of the traffic coming in store. Right. So, in the darkest times, people were still trying to get out there. They were still looking for this experience. So that was actually a comforting sign. Yeah. The other thing that we noticed was, depending on the states where whatever the regulations were in various jurisdictions, you'd see different levels of traffic. Right. New York, New Jersey, California had really depressed levels, less than 50% all of last year. They never got back to 50% of in-store traffic. Whereas some states like Texas and Georgia saw a much higher return of in-store traffic, closer to 75%.
Wow.
And so it was a really big, correlation between what the jurisdictional mandates were and in-store traffic. But even when with the states that were completely open for business, 25% of the people were not coming back. And that showed true consumer concern for the experience. And I think the big lesson we took away from this was you've got to address the consumer concern. You've got to have the safety protocols in place. You've got to have the social distancing and the mask, et cetera. Because clearly, even when there were no jurisdictional mandates, the consumers were concerned and were not coming in the same pace.
Well, I look forward to having more conversations with you, because as we do start going back, and as we do start dining out, and as we do start cultivating conviviality once again,
yeah,
I hope that you can come and chat with us some more and share all of this, because frankly, I'm such a restaurant data nerd. I could talk to you all day long. I know we have a limited amount of time, but thank you so much for coming and being with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Whether you are thinking about becoming a restaurateur or you are already in the business, Michael Politz has written a must-read, The Food and Beverage Magazine's Guide to Restaurant Success. Pick up your copy today at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Books A Million, or wherever fine books are sold.